Happy Friday, everyone. Thank goodness it's Friday, hey? Thank goodness. One of the things I feel really privileged and humbled by in my job is that I obviously work with adults who are generally smart and bright and pretty evolved because they're willing to look within and upgrade their lives, which is a high performance habit. They're willing to be vulnerable and curious and find ways to bust through whatever's keeping them stuck. But as part of that, and just briefly, what I do isn't psychotherapy, it's coaching, which is very future focused and goal orientated. What I do as part of that in session one is just briefly touch on childhood, because obviously we're all affected by how we're raised. It can really stay with us, and it's quite humbling to see the challenges and wounds that we all carry. Obviously it's very much a spectrum as a result of things that parents probably wouldn't even think twice about saying to their children, whether it's a client said to me recently, I never forgot my mum telling me to smile at people and be kind, and that client's an extremely kind person. Or another client perhaps having been teased at school for being really, really clever, and therefore carrying this feeling of I must make myself small, I shouldn't be myself, for example. Or another really bright woman very high up in the medical world who was quite scared of speaking up in meetings because she was sort of bashed down at the dinner table as a child, didn't feel she could speak up, was sort of shamed for speaking up. And there was this dissonance because she's so accomplished and not just intellectually but a wonderful human being. It was incongruous that someone who was almost like exuded sunshine and really radiated beauty was sort of stifling herself because of something she hadn't forgotten from childhood. And often those aren't even conscious things that we realise, but I've noticed often people will minimise them. We all do, I'm sure I do too. Like, oh, it's no big deal. Oh yeah, this happened, but that's just normal, that's just part of school. Actually, it's not. I sort of always think of children as little delicate, fluffy clouds. That stuff isn't easy for a child, a delicate, soft-hearted child to handle those emotions of, shaming or anger or witnessing, volatility or angry outbursts in parents. Or, worse things like alcoholism or being made to sleep in a garage because your father hasn't dealt with his own childhood wounds. Anyway, that probably all sounds a bit depressing. The good thing is I think we can really heal those things. We can sort of heal our inner child, sort of cheesy as that sounds. And that starts partly with how we sort of parent ourselves. How do we talk to ourselves? Someone said something very powerful the other day, and it was words are spells. So how we speak to ourselves has a huge bearing, even just internally. When you're stressed or struggling, do you berate yourself? Do you say you're a loser, you always do this? Do you shout yourself down, perhaps in the way that you were shouted down or felt you were in your perception as a child? Or do you treat yourself with the compassion that you'd give your child, your 7-year-old child, was it, or a best friend? Come on, darling, don't be so hard on yourself. You can do this. Small steps, you'll get there. It's a journey. We're all learning and growing with that sort of tenderness that children need. Anyway, it's just quite an interesting little point to share that no matter how strong and successful people are, that's something I quite regularly see in really bright people, and there can be quite a dislocation between how people seem and what they're sometimes experiencing within. You might have no clue that charismatic, seemingly really confident person next to you at work actually really second guesses everything that they say, maybe wonders a lot about what people are thinking about them, perhaps catastrophizes a lot or keeps themselves small because that's what feels familiar and safe from childhood. But there's definitely work that can be done there, sort of healing that inner child, learning how to develop a more compassionate inner voice, which sounds cheesy, but it's so important. It's not just, you can be a very kind person to other people, but really berate yourself, whether just internally, other people can't see that, or in how you speak about yourself externally. And that's a really important wound to heal. And it can, affect obviously real generational healing as well. If you've carried that from, say, let's say an abusive father because his father was abusive to him, it's very hard to break those patterns sometimes if we don't sort of get the sort of deeper support to heal those wounds within ourselves and obviously pass it down to our children. None of us are perfect, of course, we're all on that spectrum somewhere, but I just think it's important to remember how tender and vulnerable children are. They're not built to deal with volatility and anger and rage and shame. They're hard enough emotions for adults to carry. Their brains aren't developed enough to understand, Daddy doesn't mean that, he loves me, he's just quite an effed up person with his own wounds. They just think I'm a bad person, or You know, mummy's on her phone all the time. Oh, that's because she's a really busy, successful businesswoman. They're probably just thinking, I'm not important to mummy. Anyway, obviously this is all being said without me being a parent, so you might want to punch me in the face. But it's just something I see, and you know, it's powerful seeing it through the lens of adults, or seeing, you know, 6'2" men sort of slightly broken by the rawness of I don't know, untamed emotions in adult parents. And yeah, that work can be quite challenging to unpick if it runs really deep later on, but it's very doable. Also, have a lovely weekend.